All righty, let's get going. And I think people will continue to trickle in. My name is Ian Horvath, and I am president of the Portland Urban Beekeepers. Welcome to our June meeting. We have three people coming to speak to us tonight. We have our quarterly What's in Bloom from Glenn, which is awesome. Now that I think we're finally getting some sunshine and seeing some blooms. We have a bee sting allergy presentation by Brian, who is also on the board as treasurer. And then we have All About Queens, which is something that Dewey is going to talk to us about, and Queen Health and everything else you wanted to know, but we're too afraid to ask. So let's get going. I have a short little spiel and then we'll get on to our speakers. Thank you for joining. If you're not a member of Pub, we welcome you and thanks for being here. If you'd like to join, there are some perks. You get to sign up for the swarm list that has been taking off this year and up to 190, maybe even more calls this year. So it's crazy and it's definitely worth the price of admission. Then you also have the Bee Buddy program, which allows you to map out mentors in your area or other people who are looking to learn and find and connect with them. We have Bee Days at the Apiary, which is every other Sunday during the summer, and that allows you to get hands-on at the apiary if you don't have bees of your own or you want to see what another hive looks like. And then we have a whole list of other things such as the library and equipment rentals and classified ads. And yeah, the money that we raise every year, we like to donate a big chunk of it to honeybee research and kind of local organizations around us. And so last year we donated 20,000, and I don't think we'll get up to that this year, but we're going to get pretty close. So you get all that and more for only $25 for the year. Like I just mentioned, our Bee Buddy program, I kind of go over this every meeting, but just quickly, it's an area where you can sign up on the website, and then you can look at everybody else around you who is a mentor or somebody looking to learn. Click on their little icon, it presents all their information. You can contact them, reach out, and then make a connection. It's kind of nice being that we're still kind of on Zoom. It allows you to connect people around you and get more hands-on in between our once monthly meetings. And I'll drop links to all that stuff in the chat in a moment. Again, we've upgraded the Swarm software. Just want to make sure nobody feels left out. But yes, so just go to our website. I will drop the link in a second in the chat. You're going to fill out the Swarm report to register. We'll have to get your registration code if you're a Pub member and you don't have that. We can get you that afterwards if you just email Jana at vice president at Portland Urban Beekeepers. You just fill out this information and you'll get onto our swarm list lickety split. We will call out one thing: range does matter. So if you only want to travel 5 miles, set that to 5. If you want to travel however many miles and make sure that you're always on the list and called for swarms, put that to 99. So that'd be 99 miles they're putting there. All right, Bee School has completed for the year, but we've recorded all the sessions that Susie did, which is awesome. And you can now watch them at your leisure. You can binge your bee episodes. There are 4 2-hour sessions, and they have chats with them with all the questions that were asked and everything. These are the 4 topics at a high level: intro to beekeeping, spring management, honey harvesting, robbing queens kind of during the summer, and then fall and winter management. Super helpful. So if you're looking for a little refresher, you're kind of halfway through your season and maybe need just something to watch during these hot sunny days, this is something for you. Bee Days at the Apiary, like I said, this is every other week. Our next one is coming up on June 5th. And depending on weather, you know, I'm not really sure. Of course, the rain is landing on the weekends, which just doesn't make inspections that great, but possibly bee inspections, mite checks, adding supers, maybe some garden maintenance around the hives. We will find something fun to do while we're out there. So that's 10 a.m. to noon on June 5th over at Green Acres. And if you have questions, you can contact Bruce at Apiary at Portland Urban Beekeepers or Jana at Vice President at Portland Urban Beekeepers. And if you're looking for Green Acres, you can find it by going to this address. But we would like for you guys to park in Cathedral Park and then just walk over here on this little road and then come down all the way through here until you hit this big open ramada. There'll be a lot of other people there in bee suits, and then our bees are kind of spread out all around in this area. So we'll walk around and do the bee inspections there. But please park over here first and then walk into Green Acres because there's not a ton of space for parking in here. And again, I'll drop this information in chat when I'm done talking. Something we are doing for the first time this year on June 16th, we're having a little social get together. So we're going to have raffles and some prizes to win. It's really just for everybody to get out and meet everybody and chat and have more of those intimate personal conversations with people and ask questions and not feel embarrassed because you're asking a question in front of everybody. But yeah, let's if you'd like, it is June 16th from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Lucky Lab Brew Pub on Hawthorne. So I know there's a few locations. I just want to call out, this is the one on Hawthorne. And why don't you come out and hang out with us and meet us in person and everything. I'll be there. And so will some of the other board members, and hopefully a lot of you guys will join us as well. We got a room out there. And so grab a drink and come say hi. And I'll drop that in chat 2 seconds. All right. Here are upcoming speakers for the next few months, almost the rest of the year. We have Dewey tonight, along with Glenn and Brian. In July, we have Cassie from Washington Ag Extension on Asian Giant Hornets. And then we have Randy Oliver doing OAV research update, which is going to be really interesting. And then in September, we have our winterization panel, which is going to be really cool. In October, very excited to bring Xerxes into the conversation and talk about bringing back pollinators. So if you have any other suggestions on speakers or topics, we are looking to fill November. And typically we do a honey tasting in December. So we don't typically have a speaker then, but if you have anybody else you'd like to hear speak, just email Jana or I at vice president or president at Portland Urban Beekeepers. So without further ado, I think we'll hand it over to you, Glenn, to take it away. So let me stop sharing.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, I'm getting there.
No problem.
How's that?
Looks great. Well, almost. Yes, it looks great. Now I can see it. Perfect.
All right. Well, you mentioned that we have some nicer weather, and boy, doesn't that make a difference. I do want to ask Jana a question about the requeening that we did at the apiary. How did things go?
I checked on them, and the queens seem to be doing well. I've only peeked at them once, but there was eggs in the little split that we put her in.
Good.
And and there were already, excuse me, there was already larvae and stuff in the other one, so it was a little hard for me to tell.
Yeah.
On the other one, but I definitely found larvae in the new split that we didn't have a queen in, so that was good.
Good. And what about the queen, or the green marked queen that you took?
You know what? I think it's going well.
Okay.
Haven't opened that hive. I was going to try to get to it today, and I didn't. So it's on my list of things to do tomorrow. But the bees are flying like crazy and stuff. So I think it's probably okay.
I was just curious. That's good. I mean, that could be 100%, which is what we want.
Yeah.
But not always the case.
Right.
Okay. When I was getting together this program, I came across this slide that was on a year ago, and it's just really interesting here. Once again, I'll just, we had this big heat event there the end of this month a year ago, and how did it affect the honey, or the honey flow? And not much, because, or at least in my experience here, that they even down here in July, it starts lessening a lot. Normally by the second or third week of July, we're kind of done with our honey flow. This year may be different. Last year it probably ended a little sooner, but that's what it is. Okay, what I thought it might be interesting for just, since I manage my bees mostly for honey production. Oftentimes the question is, when do you add a super? And for me, and please realize that all of my supers are completely drawn out, so I don't worry about that too much. But my rule of thumb is that in April, if there's any honey, even if it's just one cell that has honey in it, I add another one, because they found the super. There's a lot of months, or several months to go, and I don't want them to run out of room, or if they can, to think about swarming. I don't want them to do that. In May, I add another super if there's any white comb, which means, you know, their wax glands are stimulated. They're just building up a storm, and oftentimes the white comb is coming out of my observation holes, or the feeding hole in my inner cover. And in June, if there's any capped comb, honeycomb, then I'll add another super. And that's just my rule of thumb. I put this little explanation down here because I too had thought, or I'd heard through the years, that rule of thumb had this domestic violence undertone to it, but apparently that's an urban myth, and there's nothing has been, there's no records of this at all of that. So I decided I'd use it because I like the definition here that rule of thumb is based on practical experience rather than theory, and that's all it is. So take it or leave it. That's what I do there too. So, well, we do have plenty of annual flowers now. I'll get through these pretty quickly. I know we have other speakers to go here too, but this can be a great plant, this poppy, and they readily seed, which is another good thing, or not, but they do pull up very easily, or unlike some other things there too. So you can see these this poppy here. Bees will bury themselves in there trying to get to the pollen and nectar. Pretty fun to watch that. Zinnias will be starting soon. I haven't seen any yet. This is way down the line here, but that's kind of the problem, or not the problem, but the issue with a quarterly. You know, we're still in the springtime, and then asters are generally a fall, but they do start in August, so that's why it's covered here. Well, and September. Same with all the asters here. I haven't seen the creeping thyme bloom yet, but it will. I was noticing when I was previewing this presentation that what brings me joy is to see the trees that bloom this time of year, because there's just so many blooms, and that's where we get our surplus honey. But everything adds up, so don't be discouraged, or don't hesitate to plant annual plants. Okiums, you know, fall crocus here will be way at the end. I've got some dahlias that are budding even, which is surprising. Some are just coming out of the ground. The ones that I left in the ground, actually, that was all of them. This little pink wood sorrel here is spreading into a lawn that I take care of, a neighbor lawn. And so I'm letting it, there's little clumps of this oxalis, or this sorrel, or the wood sorrel, in the middle of the lawn. It's kind of like a fleur de lawn. But it blooms for many months. You can see even there into November. The clematis will be, we've had some clematis bloom already. not all are attractive to honeybees, but many are. You can I always point this out, the purple pollen there on her legs. Food plants coming in now. Oh yeah, well, let's go through here. Lot of bees hiding in there. I should probably put this on the weed list. It's on Portland's noxious plant list because it seeds so readily with so many, but the bees sure like it. Plant blooms or can bloom all 12 months of the year. Any shrubs? One of my favorite, just nice and airy tree, which or a shrub, I guess, however you want to define it, but beautyberry, these are the ones that will just have vibrant blue or purple berries in the fall. I mention this every year that these are very, very tiny, inconspicuous blooms, but the honeybees will find them. Oftentimes this is used as a hedge. I wish I had that as a hedge. Vitex is a great, easy to grow plant, and the bees are all over it. And the trees, Evodia, yeah, probably one of my top 5 trees of all time for bees. The linden. I'll mention here that silver linden is the one of the very last blooming. It'll even be into July, which I like. Golden rain tree will be blooming, not anytime, not this week, but what is blooming is the golden chain tree. 2 different trees, but that's just a similar name. That's not a very good source of pollen. And it also kind of has it's not the most pleasant odor, but it reminds me of summer. One time a lady called me and said there was a swarm in her tree, and I got everything together and went over there, and it was just a chestnut, and the bees were just humming so much that she thought it was a swarm. The catalpa, and followed by a cross of that catalpa, the catalpa. You can see the bee's abdomen here, crawling up there. Oak tree, another one of my top 5 trees, the 7 sunflower tree. You can just see the number of bees here. And, it could be that there's just not as many things blooming at this point, but it's a very attractive tree, small tree. Unlike this one here, which is huge. And it's just great to have it in August because that's when the bees really are, everything else is drying up, if you will. Plenty of herbs blooming now, or will be. I'll go back one here, mint. Be careful of planting mint. I've spent many an hour digging up mint that got away. The Phacelia is beautiful this year. It's in full, well, it's almost, it's past its prime right now, but the bees are all over it now. And this is plants that I seeded in the fall and they survived and now are flopping all over the place. Buckwheat is just coming up now, so that won't be till next month probably. Plenty of weeds, including my favorite weed, mullein. Just about every thistle is good for bees and other pollinators. That's it. Actually, they're not posted yet. Will be. So
Awesome.
that's my
Thank
story.
you.
You bet. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Glenn? I have one question for you, Glenn. How do you weigh your hives?
Well, I balance it. I pick it up and I step onto a bathroom scale. No, that's not true. I have a old warehouse platform scale it's been sitting outside for, I don't know, close to 20 years probably, with a hive on it. And so I just, you know, it's just a big scale.
Easy
And
enough.
this I've been weighing it now, and I did can't remember if it was a 2 or a 3-way split from this earlier this year. And so on that earlier slide, it was 300 and some pounds. Now it's 111 or something. But there were more, it was a different configuration then, so we can't really compare the two. But there's one super on it. But it's just taking them time to build up.
Yeah,
It's
interesting.
great. It's great to have it though, so I can tell, you know, well, are we done, or
Yeah,
what's this weather do? And it's been so wet lately that it's covered with a piece of plywood, and so it wouldn't be accurate because the plywood absorbs so much water. So,
yeah, that's interesting.
okay,
Cool. Thanks for presenting. Really
you
appreciate
bet.
it.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. I'll have you stop sharing, and then we can move on to Brian, who's going to talk to us about bee stings. And maybe you want to give us a little background, Brian, on why we're doing this and everything as well, unless you cover that in the presentation. So.
Okay.
Awesome. Looks great.
There we are. Well, I don't know how many of you have been around someone that's had a bee sting allergy, but it's kind of frightening. It first occurred to me in 1974. I was at work, and one of my coworkers just instantly became allergic to tomatoes. And my daughter's highly allergic to peanuts. So I've been around allergies, but not bee sting allergies. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So today you'll learn what a bee sting is and its venom, see common reactions to a bee sting, learn how to recognize someone in anaphylaxis, and special considerations about needle length. Understand what emergency action to take, be aware of how to reduce risk and be prepared, and find out how to get more training. Okay. Female and guard bees protect their hives and sting when a threat is perceived and release an alarm pheromone from their Kushevnik gland to attract others to defend. The venom sac and its muscles are torn from the bee. Muscles work the stinger deeper and pump venom. Venom is 88% water and is water soluble and injected into moist skin. Venom properties include 56% melatonin, which results in red blood cells expanding and bursting, result in drop in blood pressure and pain. 12% phosphopase A2, which destroys cell membranes and causes pain and inflammation. 9% histamines result in capillaries leaking fluid, itchy red spots, and pain. 3% apomin, which destroys nerve tissue, and 2% hyaluronidase, which breaks down cell tissues and spreads to surrounding area. When stung, the body makes antibodies in defense. Individuals with a overly sensitive immune response are at risk and may be life-threatened. Okay. Okay, typical reactions to bee stings include redness, itching, warmth, swelling, hives, and itching without respiratory or internal symptoms, severe swelling, redness, itching in the area of the sting. Okay. Until a person is stung and experiences a reaction, there is no other method to determine who may be at future risk from a severe allergic reaction to venom. Venom allergy is not inherited. Symptoms can be mild and progress rapidly to severe and usually start within 30 minutes. Anaphylaxis is the most severe form of allergy and can rapidly affect multiple body systems. Urgent recognition and treatment is required. Intramuscular epinephrine injection with secondary medical measures is the only effective frontline defense for treatment. Highest risks are infants, teenagers, pregnant women, and the elderly, with those in asthma, venom allergy, and cardiovascular disease at the additional risk. In the United States, approximately 220 people annually die from anaphylaxis, with 33 due to bee venom. Okay. How do you recognize anaphylaxis? You can notice problems in breathing, swallowing, swelling of the eyes, lips, face, or tongue, rapid or weak pulse, dizziness, fainting, unconsciousness, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, or hives, flushed skin or sweating, a feeling of death, incontinence. Okay. You as a beekeeper need to recognize an anaphylactic reaction. Are you emotionally and physically able to logically act without a panic attack or an emotional breakdown and follow the listed steps? Determine if the person is having an anaphylactic reaction. Do not move the person unless necessary for safety. Have the person sit or lie down. Select the correct epinephrine autoinjector and administer into the thigh muscle. Massage the injection skin for 3 to 10 seconds. Have someone call or text 911. Do not leave the patient unattended. Note the time of the injection and possibly remove the stinger. That's really not a vital thing to do. Check and maintain a person's airway, breathing, and monitor for changes in condition. If conditions worsen after 5 minutes, inject a second dose. Upon arrival of the emergency medical team, provide a person's conditions both pre and post injections. Auto injections, often called EpiPens, are only available by a doctor prescription. Epinephrine constricts blood vessels, opens airways, reduces swelling. The side effects include nervousness, rapid heart rate, tremors, nausea, vomiting, sweating, and headache. For storage, stored in a dark place without refrigeration or freezing, no extreme heat, and especially not in your vehicle glove compartment. Epinephrine should be visually checked for clear without particles, brown or tan appearance, and check the expiration date. Okay. Auto-injector needle length may be inadequate to deliver epinephrine intramuscular due to body composition. A recent study in Canada, the skin to muscle depth, referred to as STMD, at the right mid-thigh was measured using ultrasound using minimal and maximum pressure And the EpiPen needle length, the adult dosage, 15.2 millimeters, was found inadequate in 19 to 28% of the randomly selected female patients studied. On average, women have 6 to 11% more body fat than males. The study did not include males or specifically select overweight individuals. A suspected person wearing a bee suit, such as a 3-layer Ultra Breezy over jeans, puts this individual at additional risk for not receiving the life-saving injection. Consider removing the bee suit, especially over the right thigh. Okay. As beekeepers, we mostly all know how to reduce risk when working in the vicinity of our bees. Few of us have driven to a nearby hospital, have a Red Cross first aid or CPR annual training, have taken the Red Cross anaphylaxis and epinephrine auto-injector training, or understand your cell phone coverage or limitations. Many beekeepers take their hives to remote locations, seeking a specific honey, such as fireweed honey, with most likely no cell phone coverage. Your cell phone can connect to the Iridium cell network satellite system when paired with the Zolo satellite communicator. And this is recommended by REI with worldwide coverage. The cost of this typically is $200, and I saw it was on sale recently for about $150 from REI. And this requires a monthly subscription of approximately $20, which can be suspended in the non-beekeeping season to $4, and this can be a life-saving device. Okay. So how do you get trained? In the state of Washington, you have to have a valid business license to get trained. In Oregon, this training is open to anyone, and you can get a certificate, which I have right here, which allows you to save a life and not be sued. This expands the Good Samaritan law to include a prescription item. And if you're in the Oregon Master Beekeeper program, which I highly recommend to everyone, in both their apprentice, journey, and master levels, they have a module on this training. Okay. Take bee sting allergies seriously and your responsibility as a beekeeper. Get medical care for more than normal bee sting reactions. Have your doctor prescribe auto-injector and have it available when needed to inject epinephrine. There's comfort and satisfaction knowing you are trained and equipped for an anaphylactic emergency. Share this information with fellow beekeepers. Okay. And this is my references. So let's see how we're doing for time. Oh, lots of time. So I'm going to quit sharing the screen right now, and we're going to do an actual injection into an orange. And can you see my screen right here?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay, this is a orange that was in the refrigerator, and it's probably maybe fairly close to what your thigh muscle would be like. And this is an EpiPen right here. And this is a Mylar brand, and they come in a safety tube. So you would take the auto injector out, carefully holding it, and this is the expiration date. This EpiPen is expired, and we're using it, and there's a viewing port right here, where you can look at the clearness of the item. And at this end down here, you keep your finger away from there when you arm it. So to arm this, you pull off the safety tab right here. Hold it with your hands like this and hold it down until it clicks. Now that was how simple it is to inject. When you pull this up, the needle is covered and there's no safety factor. And that's as simple it is to inject an EpiPen and save a life. These items cost about retail for the generic version about $350 for 2 of them. That's before insurance deductions, if you just bought it retail. So are there any questions?
Oh, super interesting. How clear should that window be, and how do you know, like, how cloudy does it get before you need to know to replace it? Or should you just replace it every year?
Well, there's an expiration date, and what I've been told is you can go past the expiration date probably safely a year.
Oh,
See, being that they're a fairly expensive item, and you have to get your doctor to prescribe it. I get them from my doctor, and I've never had one that hasn't went clear, but I'm not saying it hasn't. I have no idea. Yeah.
yeah, I've had mine now 2 years and it doesn't seem to get cloudy,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. So
Yeah. There was one question about with needle length in children, what would you do? Because their dosage is quite a bit less. And the biggest concern with children is the needle length being so long that you inject it into the bone. They found in studies that there's been no ill effect of giving an adult dose to a child other than the fact that they had a very rapid heart rate and a severe headache, but they survived, but they didn't die. I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying those were what actually occurred.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably better to give it than not.
Yeah.
Do you have the link for the certification course, or can you tell it to me so I can find it again and drop it in chat for everybody?
I got mine through Oregon Master Beekeeper last fall or last summer. Carolyn Brees made it available for mentors, and I took it. But I can share my screen with you on the references, and it's the
Yeah, you could do that really quick and I'll just copy it down and throw it in the
Right.
chat for everybody.
you want me to share my screen again and have that up then?
Yeah, if you don't mind, really quick.
I'll do it.
I think there's an EpiPen for kids. I think
There
I've
is.
seen one for kids. Yes.
Can you see that, Ian?
Yeah. Is it the Red Cross then? Is that the one you're looking at, or which one?
Well, the Red Cross offers training, but the
Uh-huh.
state of Oregon, let's see. The Oregon Health Authority, Public Health Division
Hmm.
is where you get the training. And there's a nurse up at OHSU in their public affairs office that offers the training. But with COVID, it's pretty hard to get a hold of anyone.
I can imagine. Okay. I think I found it.
Okay,
Why don't you guys give me a second and I'll look for it while Dewey starts his presentation. But does anybody else have any other questions for Brian before we let him go? Cool. Thank
okay, I'll
you.
stop
That-
sharing the screen.
Yeah, I feel like we should have that presentation every single year because that's super important and I've never heard it discussed at Pub before. So thank you. That was
You're welcome.
really awesome. All right, Dewey, you are up. Okay, we can see your screen. Sorry, we can't hear you if you're speaking, Dewey.
Let me try that again.
All right.
All right, let's go back one and start all over. So we talked about what started in at the front end, and it goes in the front end, what comes out of the back end. Now we're going to talk about perhaps the most of the important of the members that are in that colony. We're going to talk about queens, at least a few things that we should know. As you already saw from the my going backwards, I am in the process of analyzing the PNW Honeybee Survey, which is hosted by PUB. I have the state report nearly done. I'm waiting on a piece of information from Janae, and then Bill Catherall will post it on the PUB site. So here's a preview for the PUB members last year. The weighted average loss was 28%. Which is the same loss as the state of Oregon losses. So last year, we had among the very lowest losses we've ever had. And for Portland, the PUB group, the lowest losses that we've ever had. This graphic shows the losses by Lang 8 frames. So the red is the Portland urban group, the PUB group. The blue is the state group. A little bit better success with the Lang 10s by the PUB group, but lost 4 wary hives of that were in the mix that we had. So good news in terms of at least last year. The bad news was that I had nearly only half the number of individuals respond. So this number of colonies for PUB is down about half of what it has been in the past. So this looks at the 9-year history of losses by PUB. As I indicated, 29% is the lowest that we've ever had for this particular group going back the last 9 years. Statewide, the results are going to look something like this. I still need to get some more commercial, which are the blue lines here. The red line is our backyarders. This is all of the members of individuals that have 50 or fewer colonies. This past year, 42. And so last year, this past winter, 28%. I think with some more numbers coming in, the commercials will drop below what is currently the 26%. But you can see the backyarders are always at a higher level of losses than our commercial beekeepers. So good news in terms of the report. I will have an individual PUB report once I get through and finish the state report. And so those will be both posted as soon as I can get to them and get them up. Okay. So tonight's topic then, as advertised, we're going to start thinking about queens. I just had the opportunity to make a trip to the former Commonwealth country of Canada. So we'll start with queens. As you know, there's the Platinum Jubilee of 70 years, Queen Elizabeth, the longest reigning British monarch, etc. And just so that you can tell which one we're looking at when I refer to queens, I'm going to circle them. So there's Queen Elizabeth II. Here's another one. This is Queen Victoria. So just so we know which one we're talking about. For coincidences, I live on Queen Victoria Drive. And in my visit to the Commonwealth in Canada, I visited Lake Louise with Victoria Peak of the Columbia Glacier ice field in the background. So there I am on Lake Louise. It was still frozen, and that's Victoria Peak, named after that particular queen. Okay. While I was there, I claimed the glacier for Canada, and while I was in Banff, I visited the Rocky Mountain Chocolate in Banff. I just received an emergency note that I'm supposed to be talking about queen bees, not queens. So let me start all over, and then let me start thinking here about queen bees. Okay, queen bees. Well, we know that the queen is not in control, and that's very obvious from here. Here's our queen circled, wandering around on a frame of a very spotty brood, some ugly looking brood, in fact, but not being attended by workers. So she is there. They are aware that she's there, but this queen does not have very good control over the colony compared to, if we see this arrangement, we look on our frame, fairly newly drawn comb, and there she is, a marked queen, making it a little bit easier to see her, but also very easy to see because this retinue of workers that are around her. So if we always had queens that had this appearance, that had good control, chemical control of their colony, then it would be much, much easier to try to find queens as we go along. But of course, as you saw from the previous photo, that's not always the case. This one is being well attended to. They're taking antennal contact, mouth part contact. They are feeding her. They are removing her waste. And she's in a period that is resting in between her regular egg laying. And this is the pattern we'd like to see. This is an indication when we're, for example, rearing queens and we still have them in a mating nuke. This is what we want to look for rather than that queen wandering all over the place, no attendants or very few worker bees paying much attention to her. So this indicates that queen is going to have some very decent pheromonal control over her colony. We talk a lot about queen color, and it has been important. It's been kind of the basis for breeding of, quote, Italian queens, the golden Italian queen, like we see here upper right, for many, many years in the United States. Is it important? These queens are said to be easier to find compared to a very dark queen, shown here in the photo on the bottom. This is a different race mixture than the other. But as you can see to the left, the queens can come in any different types of variety of colors. So it's kind of a personal preference. Does it mean much or it doesn't mean much to have a queen of this very light color or trying to find a queen, a dark color on a dark comb? So again, personal preference in terms of color of what your queen might be. So finding the queen, here we have discussion. This open hive event is a total bust. Some master beekeeper, they can't even find the queen in that hive. Well, of course, there she is. And so finding the queen is a bit of an art, a lot of luck. Generally use as little smoke as possible. You want to look as quickly as you can. Look at the angle. Looking straight onto the frame as we're doing here is going to be the hardest way to try to find them. Use marked queens. Marking of some of our marks are a little bit easier. The couple darker marks are sometimes the blue mark, for example, is harder to see sometimes. Maximize your search on a brood frame, that's appropriate. If the brood frame is mostly just capped brood or essentially all capped brood, top to bottom, side to side, there's little reason for her to be on that frame. She could be on that frame, but as you are trying to find the queen, maximize what frames you are looking on. Obviously not honey supers, the support frame on the side, less likely, and those frames that have mostly capped brood. And do a pattern search. And by a pattern search, I sort of mean like a zigzag. So start at the top, one side or the other, then sort of like a typewriter, scan across, go down a line using 2 to 3 inches of looking space, then go back the other way, and then finally curl around for a third look at the same frame. And so do a pattern search, and just not wandering your eyes all over the place trying to find where she is. Those with retinues will be easier, and if you're looking at an angle, she'll sort of stick up. She'll be up a little bit higher than will the worker bees, and will come out for that reason. And of course, sometimes the lighter queens. If that doesn't work and you do need to find a queen for some actions, you want to replace her, for example, shake them through an excluder. After the first look through, you can do another quick look through on the appropriate frames, but by the time you get to a second look through, well, you're not going to have an awful lot of luck finding that queen. So at that point, have a queen excluder stapled on the bottom of like a deep box, and then just shake all the frames. You're not going to harm the bees with that shaking them through. And of course, the workers will walk through the excluder, and the queen will be left at the top of it. And then the most successful way in terms of all of this is eat honey first, because sometimes it's an endurance and you got to have enough energy to do all of this. So a few points in terms of trying to find that queen. So here we're looking straight on, which I said not to do, but you can see that we have somewhat decent coverage of bees. This is some open brood, some bee bread. So can you find that queen? This is a mark queen. It's one of the dark marks, unfortunately. It's a queen that is not really good golden. She's got some black towards the tip of her abdomen. But this is the issue of trying to look straight on and trying to find that queen. So how are we doing? Find the queen. And we will square box the queen. So there she is. She's a red mark queen. So as you can see, it's real easy to find marked queens, or a lot easier to find marked queens than unmarked queens. So marking queens, there are, of course, a better way than others. Some people like to capture the queen in a device. Others like to hold her by the thorax. Others like to pin her. Others like to try to do it freestyle as she's moving around, marker. Well, that was this case here. So you can see our green paint, we got a little bit of the thorax and we got a bit of the top of the wing. So that's not the best mark in the world. Although that's a nice color, that neon green is a nice color. Here's a much darker color, and you can see the mark is towards the back of that thorax, but you'll also see here on the wing that part of the marking got there on the wing. So marking is an art. Of course, the standard advice is to mark drones, get into practice marking drones. Be steady and just do the dot, hold the queen, or leave her in the queen catcher that you have, or the plunger type, and let it dry and then release her. Okay. So here's a marked queen. In this case, we've put on a numbered disc. These discs are available from Man Lake, a couple of the companies, up to there's 5 colors, and I think there's 100 discs for each, so 500 marks. So that might last you a while. But this one's been doubly marked. You can see the right wing as you face from head back, the right side. You can see the forewing has been cut off. Part of the wing has been cut off. So this is a doubly marked queen, and often the breeders that have their favorite queens will do this simply because a paint mark or these glued on marks can wear off, particularly more frequently those paint marks. So you still have that mark if the paint mark is lost or wears off from all the attention the queen is getting. So you still have that cut wing to indicate. You can do different wings, different types of cuts, so that you can mark, was it last year's, this year's mark, or 3 years, the way you're marking them, whatever way you want to use for marking them. And no, this apparently does not harm the queen, does not interfere with the distribution of the chemicals or her other job of laying eggs. All right, now be aware as we get into the summer period that there can be more than one queen. I've got both of them circled here. We've got a white mark queen and we've got a red mark queen. This is on the very same frame within, couple bee lengths of each other. Apparently laying eggs. The red mark queen at this particular point was laying an egg at the photo period. The other one was looking for some vacant cells in which to lay eggs. We think this is mostly a mother and daughter. Unless you've got it marked, you can't really tell. But of course, if we're using our marking system, this would be fairly simple to be able to tell one is 1 year and one is the other year. These disappear. One of them will disappear. We believe the older queen disappears in the fall of the year. So this is kind of a summer thing. If you're making up nukes after the flow, be aware. One of the things in making up nukes is we go into the colony, find the queen, the frame the queen's on, set it aside, and then shake bees from all the other frames to make up our nukes. Kind of be aware that you might have 2 queens at that time of the year post nectar flow, and that you might end up trying to set up a nuke that's all that you're putting a queen into, and obviously then is not going to do a good job in raising a new queen for you if there's already a queen there. It occurs about 20% of the cases, somewhere around that number. So what does the queen do? Well, she's got 2 major jobs. Job number 1 that we think about is laying eggs. So here's our queen. She is laying eggs. You can see, you can't see the rest of the abdomen because at photo time, that abdomen has disappeared down into the cell. She pushes the abdomen to the bottom, lays the egg. She has first used her antenna to look in the cell, make sure it's clean. And the queen has great attention even during her egg laying phase. Look at this level of residue. This one may even be feeding her while she's laying an egg. So she is multitasking at the time of this particular photo. This one, on the other hand, is not laying an egg. In fact, is not really sure what she is doing. Has no retinue. Have you found her? So I'll put another circle around her. So there's that other queen. Not a great mark on that queen. But there's something else going on here that should really ring some bells. In our evaluation of the queen, we can look at the queen and say, well, she's fat, she's skinny, she's hairy, she's golden color, she's well marked. Gee, she looks pretty. We can say all kinds of things, but really what is critical is the job that she's doing. So just looking at this frame at the right, we can see there seems to be an issue. Of course, that issue is this spotty brood pattern that she is on. Why this spotty brood pattern? And she may be back trying to fill in some eggs on some of these cells, which is never a great pattern because then the brood is scattered all over and the nurse bees need to do a lot more moving around. We like to have the queen laying eggs on a frame in nearly every cell, then moving on to another frame or the other half of the frame, the other side of the frame. Now, not this type of a pattern. So not only that we want a queen that has good attention, but we also want the fact that that colony has the conditions for optimizing the work that she does for job 1 here, that is laying eggs. Now, sometimes we may see more than 1 egg in a cell. So you can see there's some cells here that have 1 egg, an egg here on the side. Here's an egg that has a larva in the same cell. And these 2 cells have 2 eggs, pretty well positioned at the lower part of the margin. And here's another larva. These larvae are not particularly well provisioned. So we can see this condition when we have a new queen particularly, and not enough nurse bees, house cleaning bees and nurse bees to take care of conditions. You can see this is not the cleanest in terms of the rims around these cells. So something is not going real well in this colony and she's just not finding enough place to lay eggs. So not only that she has that retinue, but also that when she lays eggs, we see that normal pattern for eggs. And many cells in one area would have that, have an egg. In other words, all roughly the same age. And of course, she can lay 2 types of eggs. She can lay unfertilized eggs, which develop into drones. So you can see the popped up drones here, this big dome shaped cells up here, and then fertilized eggs. And you can see fertilized eggs here. Now, the reason this is an open pattern is that these workers are just at the point where they're emerging. So these cells are being vacated as adult workers come out. She may return as more of this opens up. She may return here to particularly lay eggs. What we don't want to see in this situation is this. So here's our worker comb, but the queen has lost her ability to lay fertilized eggs. So her eggs are not fertilized, and so almost exclusively she is laying eggs that are not fertilized, and so they're developing to drones. And so we would call this condition a drone layer, and this would be a nice, somewhat normal pattern, except this frame is perhaps one that's ready for the cull pile because it has so much drone cells. So all these are drones over here. Look at this pattern over here. What do you see here? Let me circle that. What do you see there? Look at that pattern of drone cells. Okay. Well, kind of except for that bump here and a little bit that bump here, I see North America, Central America, the Caribbean islands, and South America. I'm not sure what you saw there, but a lot of drones. So queen two, job two for the queen is distributing her essence, that what we call queen substance. This queen, as she's doing her first job, laying eggs, is distributing that because we have this nice developed retinue of the queen around her. Normally she will lay eggs and be active in that. Then she'll stop or quote rest. And that's when this retinue will form in good shape. So what then happens, these workers with their antennal contact, their mouthpart contact, those that are actually taking material from the queen, they will then share it among members in the colony. So here we have that. And so this is called trophallaxis, not correctly by our biological terms. Trophallaxis is a two-way exchange. In this case, where it's really a one-way. So queen substance, the chemicals, the essence of the queen, is being distributed on her body in the from her mouth parts. The worker bees are picking up antennally and also with their mouth parts. And then those that are picking up with mouth parts or internally are then distributing it. So we have a bee that extends her mouth part to this one. So this is the bee giving up. This is the bee taking. Same here. The mouth parts go from this bee. So this bee, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. The bee extending her mouth parts is taking from the bee on the right. The bee on the left. The bee on the left is taking from the bee on the right, because the one on the left is the one that has extended its mouth parts. This is also the exchange of food once they come back, the exchange of water, the exchange of nectar from the honey stomach. So it's not just for exchange of chemicals, but it is the major way that everyone gets on the same page, gets that message that the queen is here. There's enough of her that then they all have their marching orders. And here again, just for a close-up, the bee on the left again has extended her mouth parts. The bee on the right has produced a droplet here at her mouth parts. Their antennae are constantly touching each other, and that must be part of this signal of you're the giver and I'm the taker, or however they're working out their exchange of materials. In this case, you can see new comb. This is likely a forager that has come back. The bee on the right and the bee on the left is a hive bee, the bees that are working with storage of food and that activity of their lifespan. So queen substance, there are a number of active peaks. The five major ones are the first three are acids. The last two are aromatic compounds. We've identified another 4 in addition to these 5 that are kind of major, but there are other factors as well. And so we have made up an artificial of all of these compounds. Basically, the most important of all of them is the very first one, the 9-ODA, sometimes written as 9-keto, but 9-oxidec-2-enoic acid, 9-ODA. You'll just see that, or simply queen substance, or QMP, which is queen mandibular pheromone. And why we say that is a key, because it has a bunch of different functions relative to groups that are receivers and situations. So it is a way that the worker, that the colony, on a colony level, not individual, but colony level, inhibits the rearing of replacement queens. When she leaves with swarms, it helps material to stabilize a swarm in the bivouac location. When she leaves to mate, it is the actual chemical that then attracts the male, the drone, to the female for the mating. It's the behavior that we saw with the nice circle of bees, what we call queen retinue. That's that attraction. They are picking up this material. That's what is attracting them to their queen. It's a material that stimulates foraging and brood rearing. And this is a interplay with a bunch of other chemicals. We know, of course, with brood rearing that there is a brood pheromone that influences brood rearing. Foraging is related to an aging chemical that bees have, that when queen substance then delays that it's a hormone within the worker's body, delays its manifestation, so it keeps bees as hive bees for a longer period of time. Compared to a queen that doesn't have as much queen substance, or when the colony loses its queen, we get what we call precocious foragers. And part of it is because they're not, their aging hormones inside of their body, what we call there's a mixture of them. The primary one is juvenile hormone. That means it's not in balance. And so the queen is really affecting the aging process of the worker cohort, the worker, her daughters in the colony. And then other functions such as comb building, the foraging we mentioned about, and then storage of food are also related to that queen and queen substance. So all of these different functions of basically one glandular mixture of some pretty important chemical materials. As I indicated, we do have an artificial pheromone for that. So that artificial, when we can add it to the colony, increases worker longevity, slowing down the worker maturation. That's through a shifting of brain gene expression and related to this juvenile hormone. Increases lipid levels in abdominal fat bodies. That is related to time of year and the fat fall bees. Plays a role in the synthesis of juvenile hormone by the coprolata is part of a gland part of the bee brain. Small colony units with more queen substance per bee may be stimulated to greater activity. And this is one of our functions in terms of when we try to set up a nuke, we are setting up a smaller version of a colony, and they just will sometimes take off at a very fast pace, and it's related to often a new queen, but often then related to this queen substance material. So queen substance, the essence of the queen, is kind of that social glue that holds that whole colony together. And some queens just do a better job of this than do other queens, for example. So in our looking at our colony, how do we know what's going on relative to the status with our queen? What we're doing here, we're doing our clamshell exam. So we've taken the top box of a 2-box brood chamber. We've opened it up and we're looking at the underneath side of the frame. So here are our plastic frames, and what we're looking for are presence of queen cups. And we can see that here there are a good number of queen cups. This isn't the only place they will be, but this is a convenient place for them to be, this interface between the top bars of the lower box and the bottom bars of the top box. So we're looking for cups. And of course, what we're trying to determine, are these cups, in other words, still are cups, or have they, has the colony progressed beyond that stage? So the next stage is that the queen will come along and lay an egg in a cup, and then repeat it again and repeat it again. So there will be more than one cup. So we've pushed back the cup here to take a look at the bottom, and good queen fashion, she's laid one egg, a fertilized egg, right in the bottom of the cup. So that's what we're looking with that clamshell to determine if we see that. Here, our bottom bar, that that cup has now gone through 3 days of egg development, and now coming from that egg is the larva. The egg is molded into the larva, and now they're starting to add to the cup. So it started just as a cup, but now you can see they're adding wax and even a structure to the wax, like a honeycomb structure to the wax, as that cell is developing. So this is an egg in a cup, and so now the cup now has a larva in it. So now we're going to change, just for our convenience, change the word cup and now call them a cell. So this is now a queen cell with egg, queen cell with a developing larva. So that's what we're looking for in that clamshell. And when we do, we'll often see more than one of those developing cells. So here we've clamshelled again, a little bit later stage, and we could now see that is more than cups. There are still some cups that are present, but we also can now see developing queen cells. So all of these hanging down into that space, or right alongside the bottom bar from a cup a little bit further up, we see some developing queen cells, and we're looking at more than a dozen developing queen cells already, some with larvae in them. Some of the cups may have eggs in them, so this looks like there's been some wax added to that one, so there's a little bit further development. That's what we're looking for in this operation of spring. And because these numbers, particularly in this location, would indicate that that might be a colony preparing to swarm, we're looking at roughly every 7 to 10 days and trying to determine if this colony has progressed and they are in fact moving from normal development in the spring onto their reproductive phase, their processing towards swarming. Dan Borkowski, the tech at University of Delaware, has set up a queen cell and did a series of photos. This was published in the American Entomologist Summer Edition of page 27. So he caught the egg, the queen putting her egg in the bottom of a cup day one. Then later on with series, he took pictures roughly twice or 3 times a day, I think morning, noon, and night, progressing to the larval stage, day 10, day 11. The main photo is day 12. So you can see the developing queen here. Already the larval features, that worm feature, the mouth that eats, nothing much, has now developed all the structures. You can see the developing eyes, you can see antenna, legs tucked in here, wings tucked in starting. You can see the segments of the abdomen. And this is the leftover royal jelly that was in the cell, that was left in the cell for the larva as it's spinning its cocoon. So by day 10, that cocoon is developed. Notice that the cell has some structure to it, so sort of that waxy, the honeycomb-like structure. And then notice day 10, 11, and 12, there's a lot of extra comb down here, perhaps as a protectant. These stages here on until day 13 is when it is extremely critical that we not move these cells, not cause them to be shaken. At this stage, all kinds of bad things can happen to that developing queen pupa that's inside. She has a little bit of cushioning. You can see on the sides, a little bit of extra wax, and here on the tip. Well, then towards the end, you can see by day 15, notice how they have thinned that top, not the sides. The sides pretty much stay the same, but they have actually thinned the top. So if you'd like to take a closer look at this, American Entomologist, Summer 21, page 27, and here's the reference for that article. When the queen's about to emerge, all that extra comb on the end has been removed. So we're right down to cocoon. So here's our sort of our honeycomb looking structure. This is extra wax for insulation, temperature protection perhaps, but notice all the wax at the tip has been removed, and what we have is that down to that bare cocoon. And so here's the queen using her mandibles. She's using like a sawing motion. She's starting to emerge from that particular cell. Our anatomy in terms of looking at those, and then so on the cap stage, we can somewhat tell age by how much tip is still left here. when the queen then cuts, she doesn't usually cut the entire cap back for whatever reason, but enough to get out. So you have this hanging, the hanging cap from the queen's cell. So that would indicate a cell that's within just a few hours of emergence, maybe up to a day. Then they start eventually cutting back, and so now you see they are starting then reversing the process where they started from the cup and added wax. They start cutting this wax back. They start taking they took the tip off here first, and now they're starting to cut back on the cocoon and the extra wax that was there. So we can tell a little bit. This one's about to, maybe about to merge because they cut back the wax, just emerged and has emerged within the last couple of days. Not precise because it will vary with a bunch of different conditions. So we look at the comb, we can do some reading of some of these issues that have occurred with queen cells. When we see this, holes made in the side rather than the queen emerging. So here's a cap queen cell here. This one had a larva in it. This one had a pupa in it, but the side of it has been chewed on by the queen generally. And then the workers have come in and removed that queen. Some people believe the queen then turns around and stings the occupant, but there's no real evidence that occurs. She is marking this hole, and then the workers come along and finish the job. Now we can also see on this one our own effects, the beekeeper effects. You can see how this one is dented here in the end. It's not nice and precise and round, so the bee can get in there very easily. Well, as we were removing this frame scraped against another frame, and we actually damaged this cell. And in many cases, the bees will not do that repair. This is a damaged cell, and they will then treat it accordingly. The workers will treat it accordingly. Now, this chewing on the side can be extremely rapid. So in this case, you can see that the contents are already gone. The side has been chewed. In this case, we had a grafting bar. We had 2 grafting bars. These 2 were not successful grafts, but you can see we were expecting to be able to harvest from here, a half a dozen queen cells in our plastic cages, but a queen got loose in our grafting, in our box where we were holding these grafts, letting them become, within a day of emergence. And so she has come along, and so all of these will be destroyed. So our half a dozen queen cells are now nothing will be left. It takes only 1 queen to do this, whether it's within your colony or whether it's here within your colony where you're doing grafting in this case. So we have this convention in terms of looking at these cells that are developing. From cups, we will see, if we see from cups that have originated many queen cells, but they are at the margin. So here's a frame, here's our bottom bar, here's our end bar. So at the margin of the comb, you can see here about a dozen queen cells along the bottom margin and along the side margin of where the comb hadn't been completed all the way to the sidebar. But mostly by the clamshell, this is what we're going to see. We can see these are larvae and queen cells. So we can see there's 2, 4, 5, 6. That might be just a cup. These probably are horizontal drone cells here. So you can actually then see that there are many. And if it's springtime, we will then give another adjective to this. We're going to term these swarm queen cells. Many in number at the margins, spring of the year. If we want to do something management wise, we have to make the assumption that that colony is preparing to swarm. So I have my secret for perfect swarm queen cell control. So if you are interested, I will share that with you. It's called Stop It. Stop the leak, stop the car, stop smoking, baby crying, elephants, and swarming. I'm not sure where you can buy it, but I've been looking around to see if I can find a giant economy jar of that. Now, queen cells that originate from cups in the brood area, on the face of the brood area. So here we have a developing queen cell and a cup. The two are together hanging from this little extra piece of comb. Notice how the bees have cut back the cells below it, actually to induce this process. The beekeeper, me in this case, I actually did my hive tool and made this indentation and destroyed this whole little area of worker cells. That meant a hanging edge here, and the bees then very obligingly put 2 cups, and then the queen put an egg in one of them. This is a summer activity, relatively few in number. So our adjective we're going to add here is that we would then term these supersedure queen cells versus swarm queen cells before. So supersedure queen cells. Now the bees know the difference between the numbers and the positions. And so we should also use that sort of as a key in terms of trying to figure out if we want to do something in a way of management. Our model, our effort with working on swarm cells is to, in fact, turn them into supersedure cells. So the colony doesn't swarm, but rather than, because that's a queen that is not keeping up with her colony, is an older queen, letting the bees replace the queen with supersedure. So if we are actually doing some action to control swarming in our colony, pinching cells, removing queen cells, etc., separating brood, taking brood out, replacing empty frames with empty frames, whatever our actions might be for swarming, then what we're basically trying to do is delay swarming and have the bees supersede a little bit later once it gets to the nectar flow. Well, finally, there's another type of cell that we can see in a colony, but this one does not originate from a cup. This originates from a horizontal worker cell. And so we're going to term these emergency queen cells because the base is not a cup. As you can see here on the right, you can see here on the left, here's our brood area. You can see particularly this lower one, lower right, you notice that it is an area where there is brood, young brood, some larvae in the cells here. And so they have replaced or reoriented this, this vertical, horizontal worker cell and made it into a vertical position. And they've recently done this with 2-3 others here. You can see there are larvae in them because these are open queen cells. They haven't closed them. These are closed queen cells here. But again, we look quickly. This is the margin of our comb. We look quickly and we say, oh, those are, yeah, those are swarm cells. Well, no, they're not. This colony doesn't have a queen to start swarm cells. They started emergency queens by modifying, in this case, 5 worker cells. So it's important for our management to make this a decision when we start seeing queen cells, and the time of year is a part of the factor. We can get many queen cells. The bees don't put all their eggs in one basket or rear one queen. Their social existence is to rear many queens. It seems like an awful lot, a great number, a lot of resources here because each of these have gotten royal jelly, but that is the bees' way in which they're doing things. These are going to be a little bit harder to harvest because there's so many that are close together. If you are harvesting, I would avoid the runty ones, and I would avoid the larger ones as well. I would pick in the medium if you're trying to harvest and trying to separate these to harvest the cells. What in the world happened here? Well, look at this one. It's sometimes not easy to tell. Young brood there, young larva brood. So is this a cup that was hanging there, or is that a horizontal cell? And it really sometimes is hard to tell. This is not my slide. This is Rod's slide, Rob Snyder. And I was going to use it for something else, and I've gone away from it because I'm not entirely sure if I'm looking at an emergency cell there, or what we might typically say as a cell from the side, or developed from a cup as in a supersedure cell. My best guess is that is indeed one emergency cell, and we've got a very tight piece of comb. If we had the rest of the comb look at, that might help give us a response. Well, after queens emerge, they cut the cells back, but you can often then have read the tea leaves of the comb. So here's a piece of comb, no brood, but notice that at some point they raised an emergency cell. So here was the worker cell, and then here's the remains of what's left of that, what had been the vertical hanging queen cell. No brood, almost no bees. So this is a colony that for whatever reason failed to requeen itself. They tried rearing emergency queens, but by the time we find this and intervene, it's kind of a hopeless case of being able to do very much with it. So reading, these will persist in many cases on for a part of the year till they do their repair work. And so sometimes we can, we've come upon this and say, what in the world happened in this colony? Well, see if you don't see something like this, which is an indication of a failed queen replacement that went on in the colony. So what's this? Yeah, easy, right? So that's the wooden frame queen excluder. So queen excluders work. Here we've got 2 brood chambers. We're adding a queen excluder, and so we know what's next. We want to put a super on top of this colony before we put our inner cover and our cover back. Well, queen excluders are just, I mean, what they're designed to do is keep the queen down below and not have her come up in the super. And they work well, like, Murphy's Law. If you do it, it's not going to work all the time. Most of the time they work. In this case, it did not work because there we are up in the super, and there she is up on the honey frame. Here's some nectar that's processing. Here's some nectar that's already been ripened and capped over, but there she is up where she doesn't belong, up in the super. This would have been a tough one to try to find the queen in this colony because you wouldn't think to look up in the super. Queens go outside of their colony just once. So here's our queen outside. Of course, they go out when they're first 2 to 3 weeks of their adult life to mate. So in the process of discovering what's going on with mating, we have tethered a queen to a line suspended in the air in the right place, and then the drones are attracted to her. The drones fly in a comet, and then the lead drone of that V-shaped comet, then as it gets close and then perceives an open sting chamber, will let its landing gear down and then land on the back of the abdomen of the queen and insert into the queen. So he's actually done this in this particular instance, and then the drone falls paralyzed to the ground, whereas often the sting apparatus, the phallus of the drone remains in the open sting chamber of the queen. Well, I've got to, of course, revise that. There is a second time that queens can go out. So here's a queen that not sure she wants to leave, but is in the process of leaving. She's turned around, but she'll turn back around. And so the second time, of course, when she leaves is when she leaves with the swarm. And it's necessary that she join that mass of flying bees and join the bivouac. So this is our swarm bivouac from underneath the limb. I point out that this is my bees. This is one of the swarms from my bees. This is more likely probably what you see. So there's our swarm. It's up here. Bit of a climb up here. And I won't tell on the 2 pub members that did this type of arrangement and actually even put the ladder in the back of a truck to be able to get up to one of those swarms in downtown Portland at one time. Of course, that's not happened to anyone else in this group. So this behavior of swarming is very normal, and that's why it's such a challenge for us as beekeepers. I talk about the 3 stages of swarming. the bees and their preparations, and it takes about 2 weeks for them to prepare to swarm and get everyone on the same page. There are a bunch of messages that are going back and forth, but it's about a 2-week preparation period, not only for the queen cell, but for the workers that are going to swarm as well. So this is a time when we can try to do some prevention. Then the active swarming itself, so that they come out and form and swarm in the air. This is actually, they're actually returning to the hive at this point. This is our stage of denial that no, it's not our colony that has just come out and formed the bivouac. It's someone else's, and they can't be my bees because I didn't see queen cells, et cetera, et cetera. And then of course our post swarming is we go ahead and try to capture them, and then regret that, well, maybe we should have done something a little bit before they came out and gathered on that tree limb before we had to go ahead and capture them. So I indicated this is a swarm that has failed. They've come back. We've had a lot of that this year from reports I seem to be getting. We had some early queen rearing that failed miserably. There was very poor mating initially in our season. And then somewhat recently, we've had a number of this going out, but then coming back, going out and then coming back. And it's related to the queen not joining, or more than one queen, the virgin queens in swarms. So it's just been a strange year for having, quote, normal swarms. There have been a lot of abnormal swarms this particular year. So to understand swarming, you gotta get this chart down. Okay, so I'll give you a few seconds to get all this down. So there are some conditions that occur in swarming, and basically then you get the queen cells. Queen cells then develop, and then the swarm goes out with a mated queen. But in the meantime, in an existing hive, the queen cells develop and you get a virgin queen, then it goes out and mates. So we call swarming a twofer. So we started with one colony way up here at the top, and then as an end result, we ended up with 2 colonies. The swarm that has moved into the new cavity or into our capture box, and then the original colony that now has the brand new swarm. And you know, some often wonder, well, why does the old queen go? Why not one of the younger queens? And in their biology, the risk is going. Well, only 1 in 5 of these new swarms that moves into a new cavity has a chance to survive the first winter. So that's the risk. The risk is going. And so in their composition, in you know, the honeybee colony is a superorganism, they're maximizing that the colony continues, because it's going to continue with the brand new queen that then can take care of the population and has enough queen substance. And the group that takes all the risks are the older workers that have been outside, that know what's outside beyond the gates, and the old queen. So there is some logic in the way that at least bees do their swarming. And of course, this swarming is different than the way wasps swarm and termites swarm and ants swarm. So all the social insects do swarm, but each of them does it in slightly different manners and with slightly different meanings. But again, trying to maximize success. So let me leave you with this other one final thought. And we've had a lot of discussion over the years of what's the best queen cell. A group in Massachusetts as an extension project with some SARE funding the help of 2 commercial queen breeders, Anarchy Apiaries, Sam Comfort in the Hudson River Valley, and a group in Massachusetts. Through a 3-year period, they looked at different methods to queen rearing in the Northeast. They indicate many benefits to keeping northern queens in northern climates. However, queen rearing is too complicated for many backyard beekeepers. Fortunately, there hasn't been much research on simpler queen rearing methods. So they compared 3 methods, the bees doing it, basically related to how much control you as a beekeeper had. So let me cut to the chase and say that their results from these 3 years, I'll show you the numbers, good number of N in here. Queen survival, size, mating characteristics, as well as new population size did not differ by rearing methods. They felt it surprising and a promising finding. It suggests that 2-day and walkaway methods could be as effective as traditional grafting methods for producing high quality queens. you know, we can do these, we can do them ourselves, and it would suggest from their data that it would work. So they did raise queens in 3 ways. They did a traditional grafting method where you moved a larva into a queen cell, and then left it in a colony that was loaded with nurse bees, and then moved it into a finishing colony. So you start in a starter colony. They looked at a modified 2-day grafting method where they actually did the grafting, but then moved the cell right into the mating nuke immediately or within 2 days. They just waited a day to make sure that the bees had started putting some wax on the plastic capping. And then they let the bees do it themselves, this walk-away queen method, where one part of your 2 boxes is without a queen, and so they rear their own. You can see a good number of queens, 94, 113, and 108 in terms of the numbers that they used. So grafting, we've always thought we have the best control. We can stop this at any point. We can get rid of the big ones. We can get rid of the runty ones. Moving them into the mating nuke right away, we've got less control. And of course, in this way, the bees have all the control. They're the ones deciding which larva to use in their emergency cells. They're the ones that are completely in control of the queen rearing. And again, the results would suggest they looked at a number of ways of measuring this. They looked at queen size. So this was the 10-day, the full grafting method. This was the shortened grafting method, and this is the walk away. In other words, the bees doing it. And you can see these are the error bars, but you can see there statistically there was no difference. They looked at several characteristics of mating, particularly the number of spermatheca in the spermatheca and the number of ovarios in the ovaries of the queen bees. And again, you can see statistically no difference if the bees reared their own queens or we did our very best with our grafting method. Queen survival, 68, 68, 66%, no difference statistically. And then the eventual size of the population, just a tad bit smaller for the walkaways, but not statistically different in terms of the size of the nukes and that they were doing this in. So this is you know, a good piece of news in that the bees know what they're doing and they can do just as good a job as we can. And so this can relate to in terms of how we might think of in terms of our requeening and our use in terms of mating. Finally, we use the only available edition for our course this year. The new revised 3rd edition is finally out, finally got it out of the printers after a long delay and number of increases in price. So if you're looking for the newest edition, the 3rd edition is now out of Honeybee Biology and Beekeeping. Unfortunately, the price is nearly doubled because of things that are going on with supplies and paper costs, etc. But it's now out. All righty, a look at some queens, honeybee queens, at least in terms of several aspects that might be important to us as beekeepers. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions. It doesn't look like we got many in the chat, but
I think we got a few.
got a few. Good. Okay.
Yeah. Jana, do you want to rattle them off and then we can open it up for people just to chime in as well?
Either way, you can do it or I can do it, doesn't matter.
Yeah, we don't have a huge number, so we can probably open it up.
Yeah, so one of the questions was, will the workers repair a damaged queen cell? So say
Often no. Most cases no, we believe no. Never say never with bees, but any damage and they just tear it down.
One person asks about virgin queen piping and if mated queens ever pipe.
So piping seems to be a communication for here I am, where are you? Sort of like the Marco Polo of bees in the pool. Will the mated queen pipe? She is capable of doing so, and yes, she will. But the ones that seem to be making all the noise are the new virgin queens.
Do only virgin queens pipe? So if you hear piping in your hive, you know you have a virgin queen in there somewhere?
you know you have queen cells, or you have queens in your hive, or they will pipe in the queen cells before they emerge. And
Ah,
workers can actually imprison queens and queen cells. So you know you've got the possibility that there are virgin queens. And if you open it at that point, yeah, it'll be like jailbreak, because you know the bees protecting those queens from getting out of their cells, those that are piping. When you open it, you just break down that system entirely, and then you'll have a jailbreak of all those virgin queens getting out of their cells all at one time.
Dewey, this is Kevin. I actually posted that question. And so just to clarify, you're saying that they only pipe when they're in the cell? They won't pipe, after they've emerged?
No, but it is primarily while they are in the cell. That's the most amount of piping, but you then get responses to it by the mated queen that's outside, if she's still present, if she hasn't left with a swarm at that point, or by more than one virgin queen that is recently out of cells, and virgin queens that are still in their cells. So it's like a chorus. Queens that are running around, as well as queens that are still imprisoned in a cell.
Thank you.
what triggers a queen to lay in a queen cup, lay an egg?
There is a feedback mechanism. So the queen produces queen substance, is distributed among her workers, and then it's fed back to her. So just as the workers are now aware that the queen substance cannot keep up, cannot supply enough queen substance to all of those workers in the colony, she gets that same message back to her. So she changes her behavior. Instead of just laying fertilized eggs in worker cells, the horizontal worker cells, she actually goes and searches out, looks for the cups, and so she puts the eggs herself in the cups. There is no transfer of a worker moving an egg to a cup, as far as we know. That's, again, never say never. You see a worker with an egg in her mouth parts, she's in the process of destroying that egg for whatever reason. She's not in the process of transferring it.
And after a colony has swarmed and it's bivouacked on a tree limb somewhere or somewhere else, where is the queen in that mass of bees?
Yeah, that's a $64,000 question. She's there because they're quiet. The only flight is the worker scouts that are coming and going. And when they dance on the surface, everyone else is quiescent, and they're quiescent because they know their queen is there. Our assumption always is that, well, she's in the middle of it where it's warmer and not as congested. But she can be anywhere in that swarm.
When you're looking at a frame like some of the ones you've shown, and there's a ton of queen cells, Chrissy says it kind of seems like a waste, right? You have 10 queen cells, only one's going to actually come out and become a queen. What do you think of cutting the cells out and starting them in a nuke?
Yeah, that's one of our ways of jump-starting the nuke, rather than letting the bees rear an emergency queen or looking around for a queen to put in there ourselves, buying a new queen, a $42 queen. So transferring those queen cells, particularly the capped queen cells, to jumpstart a nuke, in other words, get a nuke started, is a good idea. And just as the bees have not put all their hope in rearing one brand new queen, one new virgin queen, they're rearing several. So too in our nuke, if we're using the capped queen cells, it's more beneficial to put in several capped queen cells in our nuke.
Do you know?
Seems like you started with, it seems like a waste. It does. It's a lot of bee effort, a lot of bee feeding, a lot of bee attention of the nurse bees, but there must be, biologically, it must be more beneficial rather than the proverbial all your eggs in one basket to spread it around.
Do we know why bees put that honeycomb or peanut shell pattern on the outside of queen cells?
Good question. I don't know. I'm not sure if we do know. I don't. Good question. It's probably to walk on it. It's more of their familiar pattern of walking. They're always walking on those rims of six-sided cells. And so you get that sort of that pattern on the outside of the cell hanging down. So it's probably just because it's a familiar feel to the bees, but that's only supposition on my part.
What determines whether virgin queen is making a mating flight or she's just going to after swarm with more bees and leave?
The ultimate outcome, bees going out to mate sometimes will have a grouping of workers that go with them. The queen soon leaves out her workers behind, but sometimes if you're looking right at the entrance and out comes a queen and then some workers right with her, you don't know, are they going on a swarm or is that the queen going out on a mating flight? It is the end result. So if it is the queen going out on a swarm, eventually the pattern, shortly right in front of the colony is that circular flight, because the bees stay sort of in the air. They just don't make a line of bees from hive to bivouac. They do this circling flight going around in the air, and they move as sort of a big oval in the air, finally settling at the bivouac. Whereas with the mating flight, that queen that comes out from her hive soon leaves the accompanying workers behind, and off she goes. And then, of course, you don't see that circling flight in front of the colony of the bees in the air, getting themselves organized to move to the bivouac site. One of the greatest sensations, if you ever have the chance, is stand in the middle of one of those swarms leaving a colony, preferably your neighbor's beekeepers' colonies, leaving the colony and doing that circular flight. Stand there right where they're doing all of this. Amazingly, no bees are bumping into you. It's like bats at night with their echolocation. They just miss you all the time. They come close with their swoops, but they just miss you. And same too with those bees. It's just the strangest sensation to be right in the middle of all these circling bees. And eventually, I mean, it's only going to last for a very short period of time. You've got the matter of just 4 or 5 minutes when this is occurring, but it is the most amazing sensation.
Will virgin queens wait for good weather for their mating flights? And if so, how long?
Yeah, they have to. And so good weather is appropriate weather when drones are already out there in their comets in the drone congregation areas. We know that up to about a 3-week period of time, a queen can mate successfully and then have a normal life of laying eggs. In other words, she will acquire enough sperm with mating flights as late as into the 3rd week of her adult life. After that, it tails off fairly quickly, so that roughly after 3 weeks of period of time, even if the weather then breaks, the chance of a successful mating is reduced. Now, there are 2 parts to that mating. Of course, she has to go. She has to find a drone congregation area, but there also have to be drones waiting for her in the drone congregation area. So in springs like we've had this year, the counties just did not raise as many drones. And so some of our early failures of queen mating was not necessarily that there wasn't a day when the queen could go out and potentially mate. They don't need the full day of good weather. They just need that period, in the afternoon, roughly from 12 to 4 of decent weather. But when she got to mating area, congregation areas, there were not enough drones apparently for that behavior of the pursuit of the queen by a comet of drones, and then one of them succeeding in landing on the body of the queen and inseminating her.
Interesting. I can see how that's a problem this year.
Yes, this year.
Yeah. How does one collect a capped queen cell from a frame?
You have to, you need to avoid doing any damage to it. So what you want to do is cut where the cell is that you're trying to capture, retain, but cut around it. So give a good inch or so around it, mutilate the comb around it. And then if it's on plastic, be very careful of scraping get down to the plastic base itself and then scrape underneath. You don't want to distort the cell at all. You don't want to open any injury, any breaks in the cell itself. And you want to be able to hold on to the comb. You don't want to put your fingers all over the cell because of the oils and things on our fingers. So you want to hold on to the piece of comb. And when you then put it into a nuke, you want to press that piece of comb into a brood frame. You don't want to press the cell into the brood frame. You want to sort of press the holding piece. So be a little bit generous with your cutting. If there are two together, that's okay. Transfer the two. Don't try to separate the two. And the one photo I showed where they were on the bottom and up along the side, it would be very difficult to harvest. It would be impossible to harvest individual queen cells. So you'd be harvesting a whole clump of 4 or 5 queen cells from that particular situation.
How are you putting them into the new hive? You just stick them.
Pressing them into comb, just into the surface of the comb so that they don't fall. So they're held there, but you don't want to then have the adjacent frame move up to the body of the cell and crush the cell itself. And you really don't, the cell needs to hang, it needs to be free. So you don't want to press it in so far that the underneath side is pressing against the comb, or it's the outer side is being pressed by the adjacent comb to it. So you really want to let them be free hanging at that point, like the bees intend.
And how does a queen find that drone congregation area, the drone mating area?
We wish we knew. Queens tend to go a further distance. Drones go and come back and refuel and go again and come back. And so they tend to go to shorter locations. So that tends to avoid a brother having a chance to mate with his sister, the virgin queen's sister. How do they find those areas? We've had not a great deal of success in creating them. They're difficult to find. We've not had a great deal of success of destroying them. So there are 3 or 4 ideas of what they're doing, going towards the horizon, breaks in the horizon. They're using flight lanes that somehow there's enough activity that the drones are following each other, and then going into these comet areas. What's incredible is these areas, the DCA's drone congregation areas, persist from one year to the next. They have a structure. They're like an inverted cone. They're widest at the bottom, narrowing to the top. And the drone and their comets fly within that area, and they're not landing on the ground and then joining flight again. They're flying this whole period that they're out. As their fuel runs out, they go back. So it's a continually changing pattern of who's in the comet. When that, by happenstance, then the queen happens to join one of those congregation areas. But we really do not have a lot of great information of how they are formed or not. A real good read on this is Queen Mating Biology by the Konigers, available from Wickwasp Press. A real good read on all of this whole biology of mating. They probably know the most about it.
Interesting. I was really surprised too when you said that 20% of hives have 2 queens, but we have a question about that. If 20% of the time there are 2 queens in a hive, is it likely at some point that the old queen will decide to swarm?
Things happen for a reason in bee colonies, and swarming is is a time when the county divides. And so it's hardwired into their biology that they do this at an optimal time in development of the county itself. So 2 queens would be in colonies in the summer, post harvest or post nectar flow period of time. That is not an optimum time to survive, because the chance of then of the going swarm, the leaving portion, having any chance to get big enough and strong enough or enough resources to get through winter is rapidly approaching zero. So swarming is in an optimization that that is done at spring development with Italian bees towards the end of it, and Africanized bees towards the beginning of their spring development. But it's they're optimizing the time when those leaving bees, the bees that go out and form the bivouac, have at least a fighting chance, at least 1 in 5 chances that they will then get enough resources to get through the winter. So 2 queens in a colony, they're not going to swarm because hardwired in their biology, that's not, quote, their time to swarm.
In what month do you typically make up nukes for the fall? Do you use mated queens, or do you allow the nuke to make their own queen?
So often our nukes we make up in the spring are nukes of desperation. We're trying to keep a colony from swarming. If we're making up nukes of opportunity, that would be nukes that we make up to overwinter so we can sell them the next spring, or are going to be our resource hive to replace a dead out next spring. We would start sometime, if it's depending on how the nectar flow is, we can start in the nectar flow, or then right after the nectar flow, we would do our mite counts, make sure we're working with colonies that have the lowest of our mite numbers. And at that point, there's nothing left for the bees to do. They have stored their resources. They'll find some summer plants and then some fall plants, and they'll hold their own. They won't starve, but they won't store more surplus. And so those are bees that are left over. There's a lot of bees in colonies at the end of that nectar flow, a lot of bees, but nowhere to go, nothing to do. No more surplus to store, no more comb to build. They don't want to build it at that time of year. No more queens to rear. They're not going to do it at that time of year. So making up our nukes of opportunity to be new queens in the fall, to requeen our colonies with new queens in the fall of the year, or overwinter the nukes to sell them in the spring, or requeen, or replace our dead outs. That's the time when we'll make up those nukes. So we're making, ideally in a year, we can make up nukes from colonies that are swarming using queen cells, or after the nectar flow, using all those bees that are left over, particularly that huge crop of nurse age bees, just stocking our nukes just full of nurse age bees. And then either overwintering the nukes, or in the fall of the year using the brand new queens to replace the queens of the colonies that have given us the good nectar flow in the year. Give the good honey harvest in the year.
Interesting. Awesome. That was the last question. Anybody else have anything before we close the meeting? Feel free to come off of mute if you want to talk, or you can chat. Dewey?
Ian had noticed the beautiful pub shirt that I have on tonight. I dug down in my pile of bee t-shirts just to be able to wear the pub shirt tonight. So,
well, we appreciate your amazing support of pub over the years, and every time you come to present, I always learn something new. So really appreciate it, Dewey.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
We'll have you back in a few months to do the winterization.
Yeah, we're going to do winter. Yeah. Okay.
So, all right. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. One quick call out again that we are doing the bee day on Sunday, this coming Sunday. So check Facebook or the website, and you can get all the information on that. And I look forward to seeing you guys there. All right. Thanks. Bye.